Hello, hello. How's it going, Sid?
Hey, Tiago, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back. Back in.
Yeah? How was the holiday?
Yeah, it was good. Thanks. Yeah, I went to Puerto Rico. Didn't know anything about it, but really cool place. You should definitely go if you get the chance.
Yeah, okay. Well, what did you like about it?
Well, it's like everything that's cool in Miami kind of thing, but you get all this incredible history with it. So very strategic port since the 1600s when the Spaniards took it. But
Okay.
yeah, I knew nothing about it. It's really weird. There's no Europeans there at all. No Europeans. It just doesn't seem to be on Europeans' radar, including my own.
Interesting. Isn't it sort of got quite a bit of American influence there?
Yeah, again, I mean, I'm just going to really show my ignorance here, but I didn't even know it was. I mean, I still not quite sure how you refer to it. Is it America? I mean, you enter in America when you get there.
Do you know?
You
So
do,
it's
yeah.
up US Customs
Yeah,
and
you need an
Border.
ESTA and all that jazz. Yeah, and then it's a
Interesting.
domestic flight when you go to Miami. Yeah,
So
it's
yeah, must be. I do remember when I went travel to the US, I'd see ads for holidaying in Puerto Rico, which seemed like they're Caribbean. You know what I mean? Like we've got our own Barbados and Antiguas, and from the British European side, and the
yeah.
French have their own Martinique and whatnot. So it's they've all got connections, haven't they? So I
Oh
wasn't sure.
yeah, yeah. No, it's cool because the Europeans have obviously no longer involved really. I mean, the French have what they call these dom toms, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, they're not
Guadeloupe.
involved, but the connections, the legacy connections, is what I meant.
It is, yeah. But they also, I mean, the French have French gendarme and stuff there still. You know, it is actually part of
Okay.
France, Guadeloupe,
Oh, is it?
Martinique. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, it is France. It is
Yeah.
technically France. But
I
the English,
fly.
they lost everything, didn't they? There's nothing. And the
Yeah, no,
Dutch.
I used to fly to Caribbean a lot and used to fly over these islands, which was always interesting to see that you'd find the Air France is going in certain airports and the British Airways going to the other airports and what have you.
It's impossible to travel in though if you're trying to go from one island to another because
Yeah.
if you want to go to an ex-British island, you've got to go through London. You want to go to an ex-French, you got to go through Paris. But if you want to go from a French island to an English island directly, oh my God, forget it. That's 3 days of your life gone.
Oh God, that's so silly. Okay, good. So you
Anyway, we've
enjoyed
kind
it.
of gone off piste a bit.
Yeah, we have a
I think
bit,
we're
but
boring
welcome
everybody.
back. Yeah, good, good. Right. So what's happened? Last week we sort of talked about the Nick Carter's article, didn't we?
Yes.
And then subsequently, more of the same has been happening. There's a lot of talks going on about banks. They're still sort of quieting down a bit, but there's still sort of people saying that no, Credit Suisse is gone. The others will follow. It's just a matter of time.
Well, I think this Fed program where they've essentially bailed out all the banks, I think that'll probably calm things down for a bit
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
surface, right?
It's quite interesting. Somebody was saying that actually the program is not as bad as it seems. That yes, they are sort of backstopping, but it's not exactly money printing in the way they used to do it before because there's a cost to that capital of about I think 5%.
Yeah, which
And
is going straight into the banks, right? So you put your money with JP Morgan. JP Morgan gives you 0.9%. Then they park it with the Fed. They get 4.5%.
yeah, but no, if they take this backstop from the Fed to
Yeah.
increase liquidity, they have to pay the Fed that much money. So there is a cost to capital.
Right.
So you better need it before you take that line of credit from the Fed to increase liquidity. That's the first bit.
Okay.
And then second bit is that by just saying that they're going to backstop it, they're hoping that there won't be a bank run. But because people will be more sort of relaxed about it and more confident. But there'll be what I think is going to be a bank walk because why would anybody leave their money in a bank which is earning 0.5% or 0% interest when they can just go straight to a money market fund and get 5.5% or 5% or whatever you're getting there. So people may not get a bank run; they'll get a bank walk. People will still walk with their money.
Yeah, for sure. And, also, why would you keep it in regional banks anymore, right? After Yellen's come out and said they'll only save her banks that she likes, kind
Too
of
big
thing.
to fail, yeah.
Too big to fail.
Yeah, so that was the sort of program behind it. But it's quite interesting. Nick Carter tweeted about there's some dirt that came out from Elizabeth Warren, wasn't it? That she
Yeah.
basically colluded with someone, some short seller, to bring down Silicon Valley Bank.
Yeah, I mean, there's clearly stuff going on there we still don't know about.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if that was ever to come out, that would be a fairly large scandal, to say the least.
Yeah, and also it also goes to show that you just don't know how many people are actually making the markets without us even finding out about it in the background. They are influential enough to change the direction of the.
And have you seen Elizabeth Warren was there on another interview saying how Bitcoin's worthless and how the dollar is great because it's backed by the government, and when there are these crises, the government can come in and backstop it.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, well, you wouldn't have these bank runs if we were on Bitcoin. And if you did, then you fucked up and you lose your money. That's called capitalism.
But mate, do you know what? You say that, and it's so funny. I've spoken to so many people who work in the banking industry, who work in the other sort of legal professions dealing with finance, and just they all say the same thing: that what's it backed by? It's a big question mark they put across, even though they know that the dollar and the pounds they're using or the euros they're using are backed by nothing. But the fact that government says so is better than actual arithmetic that's doing all the algorithms for you and protecting your wealth.
But do you ever find it funny? Nobody ever asks what gold is backed by.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah.
And I mean, this whole thing of it being,
I guess, got history. Yeah.
The problem with it being backed by the government is the problem we have today, where they just print trillions of it and everything's distorted, and we're in a right little mess.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's just I find Elizabeth Warren quite interesting. I mean, I think she's making a lot of noise about crypto. It's an easy, low-hanging fruit after the FTX debacle. It'll give her the sound bites. They just care about sound bites. They want to be seen. She wants to get reelected. She wants to improve her image as a politician. So yeah, you just gotta just accept it. They're all looking after themselves.
Well, apparently something like 20% of American adults have at some point owned quote unquote cryptocurrencies. So it seems an odd platform to run for Senate on. Be interesting to see how she does.
Well, yes, but how many of those have got burnt by FTX? I mean, they become sort of the born again army to talk against crypto, right? So you can easily, when people are suffered quite a bit, they're very amenable to.
Yeah, but she's not running against companies like FTX. She's running against crypto.
Yeah, well,
but anyway,
it again depends how much work people have put in to understand the difference.
Yeah.
So, so that was that. Peter McCormack said a while ago the hash rate has been jumping up. Have you been watching that at all? It's been quite.
I just see that my mining's earning me less every month.
Yeah, I think the hash rate's gone up tremendously. So there's a talk, and Peter sort of talked about it as well, but others have been talking about it, that maybe under the hood there's a sovereign in the background that's kicked in the machines. And has started mining Bitcoin.
Right.
So,
I haven't heard that rumor.
Sorry?
I haven't heard that rumor.
Yeah, they're saying because all the miners the more known miners in the West are not deploying machines at that rate anymore. They have all taken a pause after the bear market. Yeah, so they've all, if you look at the riots and the marathons and all have you, they are deploying, but not at the pace they were initially planning to deploy.
Right.
But not to this level where the hash rate would jump up by this much.
Okay.
But I've not looked at the details, but people are saying that sounds like some sovereign with lots of mining machines in there, in the garage, has decided to deploy them with cheap electricity. So
one to watch, I guess.
Yeah, keep your eyes open.
Yeah.
So, the other big story whilst you were gone was, I don't know, did you manage to use US dollars in Puerto Rico?
Yeah, yeah. That's what they use, yeah.
Yeah, because they're saying that less and less people around the world are beginning to use it. I mean, the BRIC nations are deciding to come up with their own currency, which I think is not going to work personally. And Fareed Zakaria on CNN, there was a huge segment on how the US will lose its global reserve currency status. Not US, the US dollar will lose its global reserve currency status, and how bad that would be for the US. Did you follow that?
Yeah, I've seen some stuff about it, all right. Yeah. I mean, Lynn makes that good point, doesn't she? I mean, people say it would be bad for the US, but the US is 360 million people, or however many people there are, and who would it be bad for? Because it surely wouldn't be bad for the everyday American. I think, as you were talking about earlier, it's this whole Triffin's dilemma thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, my take was that actually the whole point of having US dollar as a global reserve currency means that the US has to stay as a net debtor to keep the liquidity of US dollars flowing in the world market. And that means US has to have a trade deficit. If it had a trade surplus, then the dollars would be sitting with the US rather than the other way around. So it's just that the US has, because of that, and also the fact that it's such a sought after currency being the global reserve currency, everybody wants to buy it, which makes it stronger, which means that all the exports from the US become more and more expensive, making them not competitive.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure it's going to be that bad for the US as people are worried about.
No,
I guess
manufacturing has been decimated in the US, hasn't it, since the 70s?
Totally.
There's nothing left.
Yeah, after Detroit, everything else, just the lights were being turned off, right?
Yeah, and the reason for that is almost certainly because of the world reserve status of the US dollar. So, actually, I think a lot of good things could come for the average American if the dollar lost its status. But yeah, for sure, it means the US is going to lose its ability to unilaterally impose sanctions, and also, create the amount of debt they've created. I mean, that's only possible. The $8 trillion in debt is only possible because everybody else needs dollars.
Yeah.
If that were to go away, then the government would definitely be in big trouble.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the thing is, they need to bring production back. It needs to happen. The days of just living off printing money and moving paper around are I think, long gone. And there's a reason why the likes of China and Russia are actually such strong players today, because Chinese do produce shit. I'm sorry to say, but the factories are in China, and the Russians have got commodities that the world needs. So
yeah, Europe's the same thing. I mean, Europe for 30 years. I mean, nothing's made in Europe anymore. We just push paper around.
Yeah, that's it. And London's been the financial capital for forever. And after Brexit, even that's now looking suspect.
Yeah.
So, and it's very visible, very visible. So let's see how bad this flight of or reduction of US dollars in the global market and the flight of every other country to different currencies for bilateral trade, how bad is it in reality for the US?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was the big topic people are talking about. But I agree with Lynn, I think, on this one. I'm not sure that's going to be that bad for the US.
No, not for the average person. I mean, it would mean, but I mean, I suppose the elephant in the room is, okay, it'd probably be good in terms of manufacturing for the US, but I mean, I can't even imagine the upheaval we have to go from getting from where we are today to whatever this next system is going to be, right? And and the duration that will take. If it were to happen over, say, a 20-year period, that would be one thing. But if it happens quickly, I mean, yeah, that's going to be, I think, interesting for sure.
And also, as you and I both noticed, things never happen in a linear way. You expect, okay, if this happens, that'll happen. It never happens like that. Things take longer than they are predicted to take, and they happen in quite a different sort of routing compared to what people expected it to take as well. So just by having CNN and everybody saying that the US is going to lose its global reserve currency, it's not just going to happen, as you said, within a finite timeline. It'll happen slowly, and it might look very different. It might still play a very strong part in the future.
Yeah. Kind of along those veins, I guess the other macro story is OPEC Plus deciding to cut production.
Yeah, what's your take on that? It's got a couple of interesting takes on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, it's all speculation. It's hard to know, but I think they can't have not known what they were doing, right? In terms of screwing the Fed. When they decided to cut that. So, I mean, it's going to make their job exponentially harder over at the Fed, aren't they?
Whose job is, what are we talking about?
The Fed, in terms of getting inflation under control.
Yeah, true. But it's an interesting one. The first, they said it's just these countries putting the middle finger up to the US and what have you. But then it came out, now I don't know how much of it is true, but it was talked about, is that basically the US was supposed to buy at I think a pre-agreed level of $70. They were supposed to buy these barrels of oil to stop the price falling any further, to fill up their SVR, the
Yeah.
strategic
Yeah.
reserve they've got, and then they decided not to buy it. So the Saudi said, well, in order to protect the price of the oil, or OPEC Plus said,
Yeah.
they need to cut down production. So not sure who instigated it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and and again, I mean, you just wonder. I mean, why are you not filling it up, right? I mean, what happens when an event occurs where you actually need that reserve? Which is what it was created for in the first place. And could we then, if prices start going up with the oil, are we looking at high oil prices going into the American election and an empty, reserve? How's that going to work?
Yeah, it's going to be quite interesting. I think the last year is going to be quite interesting leading up to the elections. I was speaking to someone who was saying that there is a playbook that's followed every year, and that is that come the year before elections, things get more expensive, stock market doesn't do that well, but then approaching election, money gets printed, stock market starts doing well,
Yeah.
and you get this sudden euphoric feeling in order to get the incumbent to win the elections.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that plays out, but if it does, then I think Bitcoin will do nicely along with the stocks next year.
Well, I think the timing for that, even if you disregard the election thesis you've just put out, I think the timing for that looks pretty good, doesn't it? I mean, in the Bitcoin world, we've got the halving coming up, but it also looks like that's probably going to be the time frame they're going to have to start printing, I would think, as well. So yeah.
I don't know. I mean, gold is up. Gold's sniffing something.
Yeah, it is. I'm still on the fence in gold. Yeah, no, I agree. I think gold, look, I think, I'm not a huge fan of gold, but I think gold is probably a good play going for the next 5 years. Yeah.
I think the thing with gold is it's just safe. It's bulletproof. It may not do well, but it is bulletproof in terms of everybody gets it. It's been here for forever.
Yeah, and I think if you're going back to these other currencies, they're trying to settle things outside of the US dollar. I think gold might play a role in that potentially.
I think so. I think if you look at the central banks, I mean, there's a huge uptick on how much gold is being purchased by central banks recently.
Well, this is it. Central banks understand gold, right?
Yeah.
I mean, with the best will in the world, central banks aren't all going to go and buy Bitcoin and start a Bitcoin standard. That's not happening in the next year. But I can see, and in fact, we are seeing, as you point out, that central banks are buying a huge amount of gold at the moment. And yeah, okay. I mean, gold sucks compared to Bitcoin for all the reasons we've already talked about a million times. But, they used to run a 747 every week, to ship the gold around. Well, you could still do that. If you're, for example, if you started settling oil in gold.
And I think, that's a really good point. And Luke Groman talks about it a bit. He's expecting that it's going to be the oil and gold combination that's going to be the one to watch over the next few years as countries start to settle bilaterally for oil and other commodities.
Yeah.
And to settle in bilaterally, they'll have to have it backed by something, which is probably going to be gold.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not averse to it. I might even dabble a little bit. We'll see.
Yeah, no, space to watch, I think.
Yeah.
Space to watch. Yeah, before we sort of wind up, I just thought we'll finish off with a couple of very quick mentions of news that we're doing on the crypto Twitter, the Bitcoin Twitter space.
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear anything about the commercial real estate on the balance sheets of these regional banks at all?
Yeah, some people are a bit worried about that, isn't there, I think?
Yeah, I think what's happened is that I think most of it is sitting on, because it's the real estate is sitting on the balance sheets of the local banks who invest in the businesses, which is in their city, rather than sort of on the big books. And after COVID, a lot of this real estate is just sitting empty. And apparently the rents are not getting paid. So not only do they have commercial real estate, which is over-levered in the market, and it's on the balance sheet, and I think that's not backed by the government. I think the housing is backed if it's residential, and the bonds are backed by the Fed, but commercial real estate is not backed.
Okay.
So I think that's the other problem that people are talking about. That'll be, especially with the vacancy going up, interest rates going up on these loans, turning them into almost subprime at the commercial real estate level, and the banks not being able to get backstop on them.
I think they could be right. The commercial property market, though, is a very slow-moving beast, so that could take a while potentially to play out. But yeah, it's definitely something I think to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it just made a lot of noise, and then it sort of died down a bit, which is good news because less noise is better than more noise, I guess.
Well, like I say, I mean, I think it could well be simmering in the background, but I don't think, I could be totally wrong, but I doubt it's going to blow up in a week kind of thing. Maybe 6 months.
No, quite, yeah. And I think, again, I'm sure they'll come up with some sort of backstop to create some liquidity again. They
will. It's a very selective liquidity, though.
Yeah.
I was just going to distort the market again, and off we go on our merry loop of liquidity and crises.
Yeah, I think next year is going to be quite interesting with all these things coming together at the same time. I mean, what options do they have? So,
well, I mean, we're only in April, right? Let's see what happens the rest of this year. I mean, this year
true. Did you read the article, mate? There was an article that was tweeted out by Jeff Booth, and it got a lot of traction and thumbs up from a lot of people. It was this chap who posts anonymously. I've not read his other articles, but I did read. His name is Deepthroat IPO. Did you read the article?
I did. Very in-depth article. A bit over my skis, to be honest, but an interesting thesis.
Yeah, I mean, I showed it to my wife after you sent me the link, and because she works in that space, and she was like raising her eyebrows. She's like, "This is conspiracy theory 2.0 kind of thing."
It does, but having said that, I mean, the conspiracy theory guys have all been proven right over the past few years, right? So I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I would not just dismiss it because it's conspirational.
Yeah, no, it is quite funny because it's interesting how my wife said, she said initially when this whole thing was kicking off and Silicon Valley Bank, which was one of her clients, was going under, she couldn't believe it. She's like, this is ridiculous. For this amount of liquidity, there is no reason a bank like that should go under. There is absolutely, she's done restructuring for a lot more banks for a lot more money in less time than what was needed to save Silicon Valley Bank.
Yeah.
So she said there's something more playing here. So this article sort of highlights that, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I think I'll put the link in the show notes and definitely go give it a read. But just as an incredibly high level summary, he's suggesting that these bank runs aren't just a product of the instability of the system, and there might be nefarious hands behind it, and most certainly the Chinese, according to Deepthroat.
Yeah, it doesn't mince his words, does he? And I think what he's trying to, my understanding is, as you said, it's quite a deep article. And I think people should read it to figure out whether there's more to it than meets the eye. But my takeaway from it was that the Chinese over the years, as the markets of production markets have shifted to China, have obviously been given a lot of foreign exchange for the products they produced and sold to the rest of the world. And that foreign exchange, they have sort of kept slightly separate. So they've obviously got their expenses that they have to pay in foreign exchange for commodities and other stuff that they've purchased from other countries. But the net difference between what they sell it for, they still keep quite a substantial profit. And this article talks, it's something around the $53 trillion is his estimate.
Right. Yeah.
Is the amount of money that they have probably to play with, give or take the S&P's rate of return if they've been investing in the Western markets. So his theory is that money is a heck of a lot of money when you look at the size of compare it to the US banking system. So although US banking system on its own looks really strong and big, but it's pennies compared to the amount of money the Chinese actually have at their disposal if they use it to move markets.
Yeah, and again, he justifies all the numbers in the article, but he was saying that the actual amount of money needed to create a bank run isn't very large when you're looking at the nation state level.
Yeah.
And so, he was making arguments that the U.S. authorities when they go and bail out these people, according to the US authorities, most of the money in these banks is US money. However, he makes the argument that it's very possible that a lot of it is just shell corporations in dodgy Caribbean countries, Chinese money being recycled with oligarchs, etc., and then all deliberately put in these banks, and then at the right time just rug pulled.
Yeah.
And I think his point is, if that is the case, then other banks could be next. And he even makes the case that JP Morgan could be brought down, even with their balance sheet. Again, when you're talking nation state, because even huge banks like JP Morgan, most of their money isn't in highly liquid assets. So it doesn't actually take much to bring it down.
Yeah. So he talks about how that's sort of how CS could possibly have been brought down. Although there's markets would disagree because they think CS has made some really stupid decisions over the years and invested in things and done dodgy stuff that probably it was inevitable. It was just a matter of time. It was going to happen. And the Swiss government would have to step in and save the day, so to speak. But it's a fascinating read. It's worth reading, and you got to put the tinfoil hat on a little bit when you read these sort of articles, because you just think, okay, that is a far claim, but it's not out of the realms of possibility, though.
No, it definitely isn't.
So yeah, that was an interesting take on it. It just definitely made me think slightly differently on how these. And I think I'd get more interested if more and more banks do fail in the same fashion or similar fashion, and then there's a link that's proven.
I don't know if that proves his theory, but look, it's an interesting theory. I think it's plausible, but we don't know more than that.
No, quite. So that's just to wrap up with that article. It just sort of went quite well after the talk about the liquidation with commercial real estate and what have you.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, have a read. It's a long article, and it's very detailed.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'll stick the link in the show notes.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Anything else you want to discuss or talk about this week?
No, I think that's it for the week from me.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, thank you for listening, and hope to catch you again next week.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye now.